Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, it's not too often that I start you off with a set of graphics like this, but there's something I really want to be discussing here about the near-term pattern. It's specifically detailed up here in the upper left of this figure. You're looking here at what's called the P&A index. And in general, whenever the P&A index is negative, we have broad sweeping troughs that are in the Gulf of Alaska that stretch down to the west coast of California. And you can see that in the near-term forecast out through the end of the year, we're going to be in a negative P&A pattern. Now, we'll talk at another time about what these other two indexes mean, the WPO and the EPO. And the NAO is out here in the North Atlantic. But at this particular point, this is going to be the most critical factor right in through here of what's going to be judging our flow pattern over the coming days and weeks. And just to let you know why I'm concerned about it, is you're looking here at the correlation of the P&A pattern with December, and this is also holds true for January, precipitation patterns. So our P&A right now is going negative, and you can see that there is a negative correlation in this corridor with the P&A. So that means if the P&A is positive, sorry here, it would be dry there. But if the P&A is negative, that tells us this particular region right in through here is going to be wet, with it being drier up here in the Gulf of Alaska. At least that's the relationship. Now, as we get into this forecast, let me show you what I'm talking about. See this trough right in through here? Well, this is where we get to the day on Thursday this week, and you can see the flow kind of splitting here and coming together, really focusing a lot of its energy here on the Pacific Northwest, and that is going to be a flow pattern that's going to target Northern California, Oregon, and Washington in the near term. But we're going to watch that trough. You can see it again right here. We're going to watch this slide down and deepen here over just off the west coast, and that is going to keep, well, in the week 2 time period, much of California wetter than normal. So let's get into this and see what we're talking about. Just through the next week, this is what the European model is picking up on in terms of precipitation patterns, and you can certainly see the trajectory of this precipitation coming in like this. So Northern California here, we're talking along the coastal regions, 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. There will likely be a pocket in through here. I've now seen this for 2 straight days of forecasts coming into the I-5 corridor right around the Portland area, and then getting here into the Cascade Mountains in Washington, a potential band in there of liquid equivalent now, anywhere between 4 to 8 inches of liquid equivalent there. You do notice that on the other side of the mountains, due to the nearly direct westerly flow, that things are drier over here, and that is because we're missing out on some of the major features that are sweeping into this section of our western region to bring in the heavy precipitation. And what is that feature? Well, we're really building everything into a large ridge that does this. So the troughing is off the west coast. There is a big ridge. I'll kind of draw a zigzag line through it that's coming in through here. And therefore, all the action is going to be on the windward side of our mountains here. Even though we will get some precipitation into the basins here, overall, this is going to be a drier pattern unless you're on the windward side of these mountains. Now, here's the very good news. And with the strong onshore flow we're going to be getting over the next week, we are going to be absolutely packing up the snow in the Cascade Mountains where we desperately need it here. It'll also be getting into the Sierra, but not nearly as much as it will into Northern California, coastal Oregon, and Washington. Northern, Rocky Mountains up here, so think Sawtooth getting up into the Northern Rockies. It's not much of the moisture is going to be squeezed out here by the Cascades, but we still could be picking up quite a bit. But the reason why I'm focusing so much on the Cascades is because of this map. So this is basin average snow water content. You know, I show you this a lot during winter. We're looking at percent of normal through December 16th. And if I could kind of highlight the area that still shows up with below average numbers, it's right in through there. You can see that almost everywhere outside of that particular region, specifically coastal Oregon and Washington, the Cascade Mountains there, we've got above average snowfall so far this year. So we're targeting that area in the near term, and let's take a look at why that's so important. You see in our latest drought monitor update, because of that deficit we've had at the beginning of our wet season here, we're actually slipped back into the first stage of drought here. We want to get rid of that as fast as possible because we do not want to develop drought during our wet season. So here's some of the details, okay? Starting you off on Tuesday, our first band of precipitation is just hanging offshore here. And let's get this played forward so we can see when it finally gets into the west coast United States. So Tuesday afternoon and evening, getting into Wednesday. This is midnight Wednesday, Wednesday morning. At this point, we'll be impacting the coast down here in California with our weak low pressure system just sitting right off the coast. So this is Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and Wednesday evening. So you can see that during that time period, the first real big push comes in here toward the end end of our week. So again, this is midnight Thursday. Now, just to show you the pattern we really like to see this time of year, especially for Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, is you can see the larger ridge that's in place right down here. Okay, and inside that ridge, remember our flow around this ridge is going to go in this direction. Now notice way up here in kind of the top corner we have a low pressure center. And that low, basically the flow between the two is just cranking the flow just like this. And we have this almost atmospheric river effect just pummeling this section of the Northwest and of Northern California. So that is a flow pattern we like to see, a deep low that's sitting just here in the Gulf of Alaska with a ridge sitting just off, just directly to the west of the Baja. That targets this area. But change is coming. And you can see that Thursday throughout the day, yeah, we're pouring it in. This is now getting into Friday. There, look at that one. Right from Hawaii, big atmospheric river event stretching straight into this corridor. So that's the area I'm watching. Friday midday, right in through there for potentially the heaviest rainfall with some really big snows coming into the Cascades. So this is pretty serious snowfall coming into the Cascade Mountains here in Washington. Okay, once we get past the end of the week and into the weekend, there is a bit of a change. So notice that by the time I get you out to Sunday afternoon, can you see how the big high that was sitting here is now moved over into this area? What's going to happen here is low pressure centers are now going to be able to slide down the coast. And as they slide down the coast, they're going to be impacting California more as we get out into the next week. So see the low sleek, kind of sliding down here? Our ridge is going to just guide them right over the top, and they're kind of going to come in with that trajectory. And that's what we see. See them coming in there like that now? Totally different scenario, and it targets more of Northern California as we get out into next week. Now, to show you the differences between week 1 and week 2, now this is only looking at week 2. With the troughs diving further to the south, our longer range models, when again, we're only looking at week 2, so this is ending on January 1st. We see that the 7 days leading up to January 1st now have this area on the drier side of things. And all of that was due to that high that was here, shifting back over to the west, allowing the troughs to dig down into California instead. Let me show you what that looks like. So, in the near term, as I play this forward right here, toward the end of the week, do you see that deep trough here? There's a high pressure center sitting here underneath it, and right between the two, we're just streaming in that moisture into the Pacific Northwest. Now you watch this this trough, watch it transition farther south. See, as we get out toward Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, what happens? The trough dips to the south, such that as we get into what will be the week 2 time period now, which starts on Tuesday, look at what we have. The trough is over California, not here in the Gulf of Alaska. And what this ends up doing is this allows ridging to build into the Gulf of Alaska. And we get into what's called a high over low pattern by the time we get out to about day 9 here. So you can see it where the flow is going to have to do something a bit more like this. And what does that do? Well, that targets the California, that targets the Southwest, and this is the wrong trajectory on our flow in the upper levels to be getting, well, we want this. We need this strong onshore flow, and we're going to temporarily get out of that. This is what the negative PNA does, though. It tends to bring in that moisture in a pattern that comes up like this, rather than straight across the Pacific like that. So, PNA, negative PNA tends to really bring a lot of precipitation to California, and we actually see the pattern evolving as we get out here to the 28th of December into a high over a low pattern. And that's dry for the Northwest and wet for California. That's why we saw those precipitation differences week 1 into week 2. All right? That's an important pattern change we're going to have to be paying close attention to. What does it do to temperatures? Well, I'm only going to show you the European model at this point because I kind of got burned a little bit by giving, I think, the GFS a little bit too much confidence in my forecasts in the last week. And so we see here that overall this week temperatures are moderating in the Pacific Northwest and they're cool in the Southwest. That's days 0 through 5. And as we get out here to 5 through 10, remember the deeper trough is taking place out here. So with the flow coming in this direction, while we go back toward what we would call more seasonable temperatures, we're certainly going to be warm in this ridge that builds in this direction. So we don't have the really cold air that comes in like this in the near term. The flow is more out of the south and west. And even getting out here to the 10 to 15 day time period, this gets us out to January 1st, we still see that our temperature patterns are relatively close to average. So within 5 degrees of average here as we move toward the end of this year, with a big warm bias here over the east. So to finish this up, I want to tell you about 2 important things to tune into tomorrow. In the longer range forecast, I want you to look right down here. For so long, the Indian Ocean dipole has featured this, see those blue colors, and these warm colors here. That is the low-level split in the winds due to the Indian Ocean dipole. What I circled, you now notice we're losing the strong blues in through this area, and we're still maintaining this. Now, why is that important? This is an El Nino-like surface wind, or a mid-level wind, low-level wind, I should say, excuse me, out here in this part of the Pacific. And with the MJO finally breaking out of phase 2, but going temporarily into null phase, it's going to emerge somewhere over here. And all that this tells me, and this is very important, is that the Indian Ocean dipole, which has been really stuck over Australia, scorching Australia today. You saw this in my report yesterday. Most of the continent today will have a high temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, that is all breaking down, and what will probably take over as the dominant mode will be the warmth that you see here, here, and here. And because we don't have a strong El Nino signature there, but we're still seeing some westerly winds coming in this direction, this is going to really crank up our subtropical jet stream. And I think more often than not, as we get into winter, maybe letting the jet stream split like this. And it's just a concern right now, but this will be wetter for California and drier for the Pacific Northwest. It's something I'm going to be researching and trying to understand. I'll report more to you on it tomorrow. But until then, I do hope you have a good day. Look out for the major precip we do have coming in the near term, but also watch as that negative P&A pattern takes over for things to be drier than normal. It's still going to be wet, but drier than normal for the Pacific Northwest, okay? All right, we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Have a good one. Thank you.